Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. Welcome to today's live Q&A. I am Deanna Bryan, the program manager at Hope for HIE, and I'm really excited to introduce our panelist of people who are going to be diving into what we think is a really important conversation about the role of not only child life specialists, but also sibling support programs like our very own SuperSibs program we have at Hope, and why they're so important for families in our Hope for HIE community. So we'll get into it, but let me introduce all of these amazing people we have on our screen. We have Katie Taylor. She's a certified child life specialist, but you may also recognize her more as the founder of Child Life on Call and that SupportSpot app that we use that's free and accessible to a lot of our families. She brings so much knowledge in supporting children and families in navigating medical challenges. And I'm hoping that you also recognize Annie Gunning. She's Hope's very own certified child life specialist as well. She's been instrumental in enhancing our support services for families. And then if you don't know who Betsy Pilon is, you do now. She's right here. She's the executive director at Hope for HIE, and she has been amazing in leading our mission to provide all of these really important resources and just foster community support. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes. So like I said, today's discussion is really going to explore how child life expertise plays a role in growth of our support programs for families like ours. And we can dive into the research and evidence behind the importance of specifically sibling support programming. And of course, we're going to talk about like the positive impact that these programs have on siblings and their families. But before we do all this, let's start with Katie and Annie. If you could, as we always begin these Q&As, just tell us can you explain the role of a child life specialist, why their expertise is so important for families like those in our HIE community?
Yeah, sure. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I first learned about Hope when I was working in a NICU here in Austin, and I saw the box that the family got that had a mug, it had a rubber ducky, it had all of these amazing parts in it that just made the family feel so supported. So now that I'm getting to work with Hope for HIE is just pretty surreal and big for me. And one of the things we know about Hope families is that Child Life Services absolutely has a place for them. So I can give you a little bit of background about Child Life Specialist. We are child development and family systems experts in psychosocial care. So we really understand the impact of hospitalization, diagnoses, challenging life events on the family system and on the child. And so we take that lens and really look at how can we support the whole family based on what we know as child life specialists. Child life as a profession actually started as early as the 1920s when there were a group of hospital volunteers who would go help children in the hospital play. And then Emma Plank, who's really the founder and pioneer of child life, really put it all together in the 1960s when she wrote her book, How to Support the Hospitalized Child. Since then, we are in children's hospitals and non-children's hospitals and programs like this across the country. And I think what we're learning is child life has more than just a place at the bedside in the hospital playroom, but really a really great lens in supporting the whole family. So that's a little bit of background on child life.
Love it. Thank you. So we want to get into the history and evolution of sibling support, and at Hope for HIE, our SuperSibs program, which we're approaching the 1 year mark really of that program being started. And internally as a team, we've been doing so much reflecting on what's worked, what hasn't worked, and how we can improve. But we just thought it would just be a really beneficial conversation for everyone to kind of give some context. And Betsy's here to do that for us. As Hope for HIE grows, our support services grow. Our child life expertise has influenced and enhanced our support programming that we provided to families. But Betsy's here to tell us, why do we need it? Why do we need SuperSibs? Why does it matter? And what's the history and evolution of that?
Yeah, so I'm really thrilled to be here and talk about this because it's so important. This has been an identified need from our community from the get-go of Hope for HIE. So, as someone that's kind of an organizational historian at this point, seeing how things have changed over the years, I think it's also important, since we always have new families join, and other people watching, to understand like why we do the things that we do and why we have these programs. So SuperSibs actually started as an idea out of our Facebook groups. It was named in conjunction with one of our families. So Becky Cairns, many of you might know her, her daughter Drew, and Super Sib Casey, who is now in college, unbelievably. So they actually came up with the idea for our community to build a sibling support program. Many of you might remember Hope in Motion as a program for many years, partnering HIE kids with swimmers in Becky's local community. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to the Kieran's crew, because they were really the ones. Becky is a rec therapist by background. And so for her, she was like, hey, we need to talk about the siblings and the impact. And, we're going to get into the evidence, that's out there, and the much, storied research of the impact that medicalized life can have on a family structure. And then, when you look at, who our community is, we have a global community. HIE, as we all know, impacts, everyone. It does not discriminate. It is something that, when you look at social determinants of health, families that are fall at the margins are even greater, impacted. They don't have the resources that many other families have, and that exacerbates a lot of issues within the family structure. We all know the statistics out there of like raising children with disabilities, and the impact on finances, on relationships, on all sorts of things. And kind of, I think we saw over the summer on social media a lot of talk about like the glass child syndrome, and that's really directly related to the research that's out there on siblings of children with disabilities. And just calling it brass tacks, this is an impact. As much as we all want to try to decrease that, this is one of the ways, actually, is involving child life and involving specific programming. And we're not unique to that in an organization. So, there's lots of different sibling support programs out there that exist that are doing exceptional work. Some of you might have local ones. Some of them are called Sib Shops, is an organization that has great localized resources, and there's a lot of different things. And so as we were able to grow this idea of building out more concrete resourcing, programming for our kids, for our siblings, for our whole family structure, really, we're able to do so much more now than we were before, because we've grown as an organization, and to be able to do these at a level that I think many of us have dreamed about since the inception of the organization. And since, traveling down the journey, for those of us who, started our family, and HIE was, a part of our first go with being a parent, and have added on to families. How do you make all of that work and make those decisions, family planning decisions, and thinking about, how things work. And then you look at people who had other kids, and then HIE enters your life, and how does that impact from the NICU beyond, right? And then from the range of outcomes. We talk a lot about, again, that impact to the range of outcomes. I have conversations all the time. I had one recently with Becky Detleff, who's on our board of directors, who unfortunately is a part of our lost community. And her two living children did not meet their sibling who passed away from HIE, but that loss still profoundly impacts them. And this program and other educational Q&As like we've done with Annie and with Katie, have really helped she and others have the words to even and resources to talk about, facilitating these conversations with their kids, because we're not all, we don't all have the time and the privilege to be able to, give this, mindset of like, equity and focus and knowing what to say and do. But I think everyone is here in our community wanting to do the best by their kids and families. And that's why I'm so excited to have this program. So that's just my little shout out to the Cairns family for, and Casey for many years. You can go back in our archive. She's done blogs and Q&As with us as well, of being a super sib. And we just want to make sure that people feel seen and supported. And that's always been a part of our goal with support. So that's the history from the organizational standpoint. And I know that Annie and Katie are going to get more into the nitty gritty. But there is, everything that we try to do with Hope is based on evidence-based information. We do it strategically and with a purpose. We see the needs. We, hear people's unmet needs, and we try our best to do what we can, where we can, how we can, and do so in the context of, an ever-changing world. So, but with similar challenges that continue throughout time. So I want to thank you both and thank Deanna for always being an immaculate host on these. And I look forward to hearing the rest of this, but always, if there's other questions of how we grow programmatically, we're here from a organizational standpoint to talk through those as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Betsy. Bye, Betsy. I'll remove you from the stage. And now it's us three. So yeah, she kind of segued us perfectly into the why. It's always Simon Sinek. What's the why? What's the why behind what you do? That's the most important. And it's not like we just had like a random thought one day as a team, or like, hey, you know what? We're going to start supporting siblings. There's so much evidence. There's so much research out there. And obviously as child life specialists, you're tuned in to what that looks like. And for people on the outside who maybe don't have that area or degree, we know it's important, but maybe we just don't have the words behind it to say why. So that's why you guys are here, is to give us, look, we have so many pages of evidence that we're going to go through. So what research, what evidence can you give to us that kind of just even further validates or proves the need for programs like SuperSibs, or just even for other organizations or other families who maybe even aren't related to Hope for HIE? Because I know, Katie, that this is going to be streamed on your Instagram too. And you have a wide variety of families that are a part of Child Life on Call. Even siblings of children with medical conditions, not even potentially HIE. So I will hand the baton to you guys, and you can walk us through some of this really important stuff.
Sure. When Annie and I went to school, we didn't learn about how one specific diagnosis can affect a sibling. We learned about overarching characteristics that siblings may exhibit or feel or demonstrate based on being the sibling of a child who's hospitalized or with a diagnosis. And I think the more you get into a diagnosis, you can find some pretty common themes that go throughout it. But so when we're working with families, some of the characteristics that we see in kids, and also based on research, are that there's kind of an emotional complexity for these kids. You can go from your highest highs of feeling so much joy and so much pride in watching your sibling accomplish something, get discharged from the hospital, get through a treatment. And at the same time, you can feel jealous about that. You can feel jealous that your sibling is always the one getting gifts, that they're the ones always getting attention. They're getting to spend more one-on-one time with parents. There can also be a characteristic of role confusion. And that really comes with, what is my role within this family? And it can be both ends of the spectrum. The spectrum up at the top, that I feel like I'm doing too much. Like, am I one of the parents or caregivers? And then there's the role that, like, do I even belong in this family because I don't have this diagnosis? One of the amazing characteristics too that I love to see is this resilience that siblings are able to show. And we'll go into that a little bit. It's also important to note that siblings may face some social isolation, as they may not be in a community that has other families like them. And just inherently, we think we can all have compassion for that, like, tween teen who's just trying to find their way in the world. And then you feel like you have this added kind of letter that makes you different from others. And so, Annie, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So when Katie and I were talking about this and we wanted to do just some research on all of the things sibling related, because we know there is a lot of research out there on the impact that medical diagnosis or illness has on siblings. And we will share this later, but I wanted to note too that the Sibling Leadership Network has a large resource database on all the research. I think what I saw was 1962 to 2017. So there's a ton of research. There needs to be more, and that is stated as well. But we know there's a lot out there because this is such an important topic. And when, you know, kids have a family member, a sibling that is ill, has the medical complexities, has the HIE, there's a lot of adjustments that they have to make within their life, within their family, within their own emotional structure. And there's a lot of distinctive experiences that they have as siblings of a child with disabilities. Like Katie kind of already mentioned, they have that conflicting and complicated emotions. You want to be really excited for a sibling for maybe what they're getting or what they're doing. And you also, I've talked to siblings that like they get really mad at their sibling for doing certain things, but then they feel that guilt because they know they can't help it. And that's a really hard thing to understand, and supporting that and letting them know like, yeah, we hear you and that's okay that you feel that way. And you're allowed to feel like that. And yeah, who, you know, everybody would, who wouldn't? And it also makes their family dynamics very complex, because when you have one person, even a sibling, a parent, anybody with a medical diagnosis or illness, it affects the entire family. The whole family dynamics are going to change because of hospitalizations, doctor's appointments, therapies, the attention that's needed. So all of those things change and are affected. A lot of siblings are also exposed to violent or aggressive behavior, and that's going to affect them. Seeing that on a daily basis, on a regular basis, weekly, whatever that is, that's scary. That can be traumatizing. So that needs to be supported. We know that affects kids and how they cope. A lot of them take on extra caregiving responsibilities, whether that's they do it just kind of naturally helping, always wanting to help the sibling because they're a sibling and they want to help, or that's put on them to help because they know they need to. Those things are also very difficult for a sibling. I've talked with siblings and they've said, I just feel like I have a lot to do. Even on top of their schoolwork and their activities, I just feel like I have more chores even. You know, they have more things and they see that and they feel that. So acknowledging that. And then we all know that they have very unique lived experiences based on or with inclusion or maybe end of life or quality of life. That's not a normal conversation that a lot of families might have. But when you have a child in the family with medical complexities, inclusion, quality of life, those are regular conversations. And that's different. That's probably different than what their peers are talking about. So again, all of these things are affecting their growth and their development. And so as healthcare professionals, as adults, we need to make sure that we are aware of this and we are supporting them. So the more research that we can do to support them, and the earlier we can get in and support them and listen to them and let them know they have that voice, the better they are in the long term.
Yeah, I'm kind of just thinking, Annie, for parents who are watching this and are just kind of like nodding their head and going, oh my gosh, I feel like I see all of these, is the message to take away from what Annie said is just this, the power of validating what you're seeing in that sibling. So I can imagine you're feeling jealous, or, you know, maybe you're getting angry because your sibling got XYZ, just naming what you're seeing. And then also kind of knowing that the perspective and other characteristics of siblings are that because they've seen their family and their sibling go through difficult things and they themselves have gone through it, they typically have improved coping strategies and resilience. It can often influence the career choice that they make. And I've heard that anecdotally, and I've heard it in research, and I've talked directly to siblings who say, I have chosen this career because I saw the impact this person had on my family. I want to do that for others. So it's pretty incredible how this can truly shape their life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I love what you both are saying, especially Annie, when you say like the earlier we can support and like the earlier we can equip. You don't know. I mean, this is especially with the HIE. This isn't most of the times unexpected, right? And you're thrown. A lot of people just feel thrown into this situation, and then when there are other children in the mix, it's hard to know what to say. How are you're not? No one hands you a manual, right? Of like, here's what you're supposed to say, and here's how you're supposed to support, and here's how you're supposed to validate. So, and prior to Hope, I didn't even know what a child life specialist was. I didn't even know they existed. And it wasn't until my daughter was in the emergency room at Mott's Children's with 106-degree fever that this savior walked into the room with a light thing and helped her not cry while they gave her medicine. That I was like, what? Who are you? Why are you so helpful? So just bringing, I love that we have time to get together and talk, because there's just a level of awareness and education that comes with this that I think so many people can benefit from. So I know that, for those of you who are like out there who are really, really interested, they said all these amazing things that are evidence-based. When we create the takeaways for this, I can link to the specific resource that they're looking at. And for those of you who just like are really studious and love to read research-based articles, you'll have that if you want it. But it is helpful to learn more. Now, moving away more from evidence, and let's talk about impact, right? What are some specific examples in your experience of programs like these positively impacting siblings and their families?
Yes, and I can talk a little bit about that just in our SuperSib program that we have here at Hope, because these were all the things that I was thinking and had in mind when we started about this program. Just supporting the non-patient or the sibling in the community outside of the hospitals was one of my passions. And that is, so I really wanted to make sure we were able to do that. And this is a global organization. It's virtual, so it's definitely different than doing it in the hospital. But we can still support our siblings and our families as a child life specialist. We can still provide all of that. So a lot of what SuperSibs does, Katie already mentioned this, validation. I think validation is huge for children. Just letting them know, again, they have that voice, what they feel is okay. You can feel however you want, and who are your people that you can talk to, and making sure that the teacher, their doctor, whoever the adults are in their life, they are aware of this too. And they also are going to be validating their experiences in school. And if they're having a hard time one day, validate that. That needs to be acknowledged. As part of SuperSibs, we like to create a shared experience or shared identity. We're all doing this thing together. It may not all be exactly the same, but you're not the only one. So it's also decreasing those feelings of isolation, because I've talked to a lot of siblings who are like, I'm the only one, like in their classroom, because their worlds are small. It's their classroom or their sports team. No, there's other kids out there. So creating that space for them and letting them know that there's other kids that have something similar happening in the same family. It could be one incident. Oh, your sibling goes to therapy twice a week too. And so that changes how you go to soccer or whatever. Like, that's huge for a kid. They need to know that they're not the only one. They want to fit in. It also just, again, in the same way, kind of normalizes it for them. You're with other kids who get it. Like, we're all on the same kind of team here. And then we're also just addressing their own individual needs. This is what they need right now. They need this support. This is just for them, so that they get the support. They get to ask the questions, and we get to provide any kind of information and other coping suggestions that they might need. And it just increases that community and connection. And if we can support the child and give them suggestions to help their relationship with their sibling, with their parents, so we're helping support all of those dynamics in the family, it's just going to make for a stronger family bond and family relationship. So that's one of the things we like to focus on too. When I send out those packets, usually I put in something like family connection activity. There's something you can do on your own. Here's something you can do with the sibling. Just different ways to kind of bring that connection and strengthen that family.
Yeah. It's interesting because, Deanna, you're exactly right. Like, nobody's given a manual except in SuperSibs, and you kind of are. you're given a manual and a step-by-step guide, and like the thought and the time that Hope for HIE has put into this programming is really unmatched by other sibling programs that I've seen, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's all Amy. I mean, and it is true. I mean, when we say in our description of SuperSibs and we promote it to families, we promote it to social workers or people in the NICU or PICU at hospitals who have this sick kid and are seeing a sibling needing support. I mean, it's individually curated for these community members, and it's developmentally appropriate, and there's choice and there's ownership in it. So yeah, it's been amazing to help you kind of bring those resources to life. I do nothing more than put it on a pretty piece of paper. Annie does all of the content.
That's not true. She's being modest. She helps me.
Well, it's so fun, like on the outside, to see families on social media post their SuperSib stuff.
Yeah.
Like the sibling is the feature of this photo. Like the sibling it's so exciting because it truly makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, we have it broken up into different age groups. So we have like a 0 to 3, and I send more information for the parents to help support their child, but then activities too. And then like 4 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 13, 14 and up, I think is how we have it.
You did it.
Yeah. And so we include the activities, resources though too, coping strategies and suggestions. Like all of those things are included to support those siblings the best that we can virtually, but also knowing that I'm here and you can reach out to me and we can talk about some other stuff too.
Absolutely.
And just kind of looking at Amy Cutler's comment about how there's a lot of sibling resources, or seems to be a lot of sibling resources for families with autism, but less for kids with medical complexities. And I do think there is a component of stress that siblings feel when their child or when their sibling has a lot of meds to take every day, requires their parents to be too hands-on. And so they have to be on the sidelines sometimes because it's not a choice. We physically have to put the G tube back in. I can't hold you right now. And that they worry about, just like parents do, what are the scans going to show? What are the biopsy results going to show? There is this added layer of, I think, stress, but then awareness and perspective too, that these siblings face and see that others don't. They know life is bigger than just school and soccer. They know life has a bigger purpose and a bigger meaning, and that can in turn be really beneficial.
Yeah. We've talked about it, Annie and Katie, you both talked about this level of peer support and how it can be very normalizing. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to use it, normalizing.
Oh, it is.
So yeah, I was like,
we'd love to normalize things.
We'd love to normalize. Anyways, but so when it comes to family dynamics and social dynamics, things along those lines, how can we as parents, how can you as child-led specialists assist parents or caregivers in normalizing the complexity of sibling relationships, especially families where there is a medically complex child? And why is that helpful or beneficial to the well-being of that family as a whole?
Do you want me to start, or you want to go, Katie?
I can just, it is, you could, in terms of engaging and normalizing it, I think that's just going to happen naturally. If you follow Effie, who's from Once Upon a Gene, she has a podcast. She talks about how she took her daughter, who is the sibling of a child with a rare disease, into the ER, and the nurse was getting ready to do stitches and called a syringe a squirter. And she was like, that's not a squirter, that's a syringe, right? Like, talk to me because I know what's going on. That normalizes and desensitizes her experience because she's so aware of other things. So I really see including siblings, not excluding them, based on your assessment of how they're doing. So that means if every time the medical stuff comes out, you're completely focused and the sibling has to go away, next time, see if you can give them a job to help with something, whether it's playing or singing. It doesn't necessarily have to touch the medical stuff, but that normalizes the experience for them and brings a little bit of play or positivity to it.
Definitely. And just to kind of expand on that a little bit, and again, talking about how, it affects the family dynamics and everyone is affected. Like Katie said, the siblings are there, they're seeing stuff and engaging them because it does impact then when they go to school or who they're talking to at school. Or I think something that I've heard siblings talk about several times is, what do I say when my friends ask me about my sibling? Like, I don't know what to say. So I just told them my sibling does that too, or my baby can do that too, because they don't know what to say. So again, normalizing that for them, and then having that role-playing conversation. I love role-playing with kids. So, hey, let's pretend we're on the playground and your friend comes up and says, why does your sister have a tube in her stomach? Then we can talk through that and give them some cues and some words and some language to use when they answer, and they feel confident, and then they're empowered and they can be the one to share the information. And I always think that's an important piece to just empower them.
Yes, absolutely.
Marina had a great comment here, and I just want to touch on it. And she's noticing the different stages of development of her sibling too. And so that will often change. You'll see, especially from infancy and toddlers, like it's a very egocentric world for that child in that stage of development. As they move through, they want to be the helper. This is literally role versus role confusion, whatever Piaget or Erickson said. So you'll notice they'll want to be helpers, and then you're going to maybe see that dissipate too, and that's okay. They may go through ebbs and flows of really wanting to be involved and then not wanting to be involved at all and wishing everything were normal and they had a normal sibling and their life wasn't like that. And that is to be expected and is a normal reaction. Does not have anything to do with how much they do or do not love their family or how they'll grow up. We can expect those things as we watch kids go across the growth continuum. So it can be so easy to look at one experience or one tantrum and say, this is how it's going to be. That's not always the case. And in fact, it's incredibly age appropriate for those types of reactions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where that validation comes into, right? Like, hey, I get it. You are done with this today, or you have every right to be mad and not what. That's just that validation, their voice. Yeah. We need to acknowledge their voice. I think some people had asked about, like, okay, now what do we do? What do we do to help with this relationship? Or what do we do to help our relationship with our sibling who, the sibling who doesn't have any disabilities or medical needs? So I love using, and I'm going to plug Mighty and Bright here because I love their special time cards. And I use them with my kids that I see all the time. So the gist of it is, you pick an activity, it's child-led, they get to pick. So you're going to get in their world for 10 to 15 minutes, set a timer on your phone or the stove or whatever. And then the timer, it goes away. There's no phone. And you are going to completely engage with whatever activity. You're going to build a fort. You're going to color. You're going to go on a walk, whatever that is. And for 10 to 15 minutes, you are just one-on-one with them. And that 10 to 15 minutes is huge because it's uninterrupted. Because we might do something and leave and come back, but that 10 to 15 minutes of just devoted time is really meaningful and can be really powerful with them. And I think, Katie, it was on one of your podcasts, a parent talked about the drive. Every Friday there was they went to drive and get pizza, and the older sibling went, and that was one of her favorite times. That's just when it was only her and mom. They got to talk and listen to music and do whatever. So it was like an everyday activity, but it counted. It was important. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be a big planned thing. It can be something that you would normally do.
Yeah, and well, that was the perfect response. Just coincidentally, we had a comment come in from Lauren who says that her older child sometimes fights for attention. And it's important, she says, to recognize and react appropriately. Her child is 6 years and older, but just even having, like you said, those 10 to 15 to 20 minutes that are uninterrupted or that special bonding time is really important. We also had Haley Thomas, our social worker, had a peer perspective series where she talked with parents with children of more medically complex outcomes. And they said, if you are privileged, or if you're in a position where you can delegate responsibility, you can delegate like parental roles to like focus attention on one kid, and that ebbs and flows, and there's flexibility in that. Just asking, having support in that endeavor too can be really, really helpful. And even if attention can't come from both caregivers, if there are two caregivers in that home at the same time, it can come from one or the other at different times, and that's okay. Yeah,
definitely.
So we both Child Life on Call and Hope, we did a little shout out to our community in preparation for this Q&A, and forgive me. And we said, what's important to know for you? We want to answer your questions. We want to be there to support you guys. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this. And there were so many amazing questions that came back that ranged, from, how to support a child who feels like they're a caregiver, to how to support a sibling when their medically complex sibling is in a planned or unplanned hospitalization, how to talk to my sibling about the child that I lost. So many things came in, and I know that a lot of these questions, we actually already have some pre-established Q&As that you and Annie and I have done previously, and we can always link to that. But now is a great time for you two to kind of walk through some of those really prominent questions that came through, and just to provide that little extra level of support for people who are joining us today.
Yes. You want to just kind of start and go down what we have on here? Like, we can start with someone had asked, helping support a sibling during planned and unplanned hospitalization. And I think we have talked about that a little bit in a past Q&A, but anything unplanned, I always like to tell families, come up with a plan for the unplanned, so you're telling the sibling, hey, if something ever happens and we have to go to the hospital, this is who's going to be here for you after school, or this is who's going to pick you up. This is who's making you dinner, because that's what they're focusing on. What's going to happen to me? Who's going to be here for me and to help me? It's scary to not know who's going to be there for you. So I think just having that plan in place and making sure they know who's always going to be there. Should something happen, this is who's going to help you. And for those planned trips, making sure there's always still a connection. Maybe they help pack a bag. Maybe, hey, can you get their favorite pajamas or favorite stuffed animal? What do you think we should do? Asking them and bringing them on. What do you want to do for soccer this week? Do you still want to go? Do you want somebody, you'll find another ride. But I think getting their input as well, instead of just telling them this is what's happening, is really, again, goes with that whole, their voice needs to be heard. Okay, you can.
And I'd like to comment too on somebody who's attending live, and when a sibling says, I want hearing aids too, or I want to have surgery, or I want to be able to do this or that. The simple response of validating is like, yeah, you see your sister gets that. And you don't have any special hearing aids like that. Identify for them what they have that the sibling does not have. And there are not always going to be even and fair things. I have a 6 and a 9-year-old. So we're always talking about what's fair and how many M&Ms did they get versus what I got. But at the same time, it's okay to explore that then and say, okay, well, we can't get hearing aids from the doctor for you, but we could make some out of pipe cleaners, or we could draw some out, or we could put some on your baby doll. So just kind of always bringing play, especially with those younger kids, acknowledging that there's this kind of, maybe an envious of they have something that I don't have. And that's completely a normal in a sibling relationship too, whether it's about M&Ms or hearing aids. I want what they have.
Yeah, I relate to everything that you just said. I mean, I have a almost 5-year age difference between my two children. And so there's a baby, and then there's a almost 6-year-old, and Dexy, my oldest, wants everything that the baby, and I feel so validated with your response, because I constantly went to, well, you have this and she doesn't, and you have this and she doesn't. My inner fear and the perfectionist in me says, oh, I just made a mistake, because now I'm pointing out, I'm creating it in saying that what they have different, I'm creating a wedge or a disconnect. But I feel glad that you say that that's a good response, to have and to identify things that they have that the others
Yeah.
don't. I always got worried about my response.
Yeah. And I think there's no good or bad responses. That's the
Mhm.
other thing, is you're naming what is true, what is the reality. And whatever feeling they have around that is just the feeling that they have. And so I think we can be so quick to want to fix or anything like that. And sometimes just letting it be and naming the experience, the validation, the normalization is so big.
Yeah. I know there are so many other questions, and we still have time to go through some of them. Do you mind if I just kind of read some off and you can tackle it? So let's say, let's do this one because it has been brought up a lot previously and just in our conversation. How do we support an older sibling who worries or acts as a caregiver to their younger, in this case, HIE sibling, but any sibling with a medical complexity?
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear all of that.
Yes, it was, yes. How do we support an older sibling who worries or acts as a caregiver to their younger HIE sibling without the parents, they're not intentionally giving her any caregiver roles. The child is taking it upon themselves to act that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is one of the things we kind of mentioned earlier. Sometimes they automatically do that, and sometimes they're assigned. I think talking to them and just keeping open communication with them, always like, we thank you for helping and we appreciate what you're doing, but this is our job and we can do this. How about you do, if you want to do something to help, give them one job. Because I think a lot of times too, kids, what they see their family, they see their parents stressed out, and they want to help. They don't want to add anything to the stress. So they will start helping, or they will do anything they can to decrease adding stress to the family. Like, some kids won't talk about how they're feeling and things that scare them because they know their parents are already worried and stressed. And if they share what they're feeling, that's going to add to it. So open communication always. And just maybe assigning that one role. Hey, how about you help with this? We got the rest. We got it.
Right. And I think as long as it's not interfering with that child's growth, ability to play and be a child, that it can be seen as a really positive, endearing quality. It's when we're watching the child take on adult responsibilities and almost taking care of the adult, like Annie was saying, or feeling like they have full responsibility. That's when it becomes a little challenging and you want to start seeking some support, or really coming up with a plan. Like Annie was saying, I think was great examples of, can you help with this one thing? And, or help with another aspect within the house that doesn't have to do with actual caregiving. Like, can you take out the trash? That needs to be done. And that has nothing to do with your sibling. Sibling chore. Sorry, I have a quick story. It's just such a good one. A friend of mine was born with a medical condition, and her sisters, they're now well into their 30s and 40s. Her sisters were always like just so envious because Jamie never had to take out the trash. Everybody else in the family had to take out the trash, but Jamie never had to take the trash because Jamie had a medical diagnosis. And so and Jamie now like sits prim and proper, and she's like, you're right, I did not have to take out the trash. They can laugh about it now. But giving the sibling who is even, has a medical complexity jobs and roles within the family is an important part of the family system. You live here, and maybe it's just, maybe they can't take out the trash, but can they put socks together? Can they take one, thing from the room to the other side of the room? Assigning roles and responsibilities and not having one child get out of it because they have this diagnosis.
I mean, I feel like it always comes down to a sense of purpose. And I know like no kid is going to say my purpose was to take out the trash. Like, I get it. Right. But it goes well beyond the very surface level of that action, which is my family needs me and I have a role to play and I am important and there are things that I can contribute. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this is a really interesting question that was sourced. I don't know if this was sourced from Hope or from Child Life on Call. But it says, my almost 9-year-old says that she sometimes feels like she has to hide her emotions because the parents are either she feels like the parents either overreact or are kind of already stressed and there's already tension just with like the medical complexities in life that's happening. I'm not sure if we're really like that, the parent says, or if that's been the case since her younger brother was born. But she hopes that she just wants guidance and how to make her child feel free to express her emotions and not feel like she's bothersome or burdensome when it comes to her needing her own emotional support from her parents.
I would start by modeling that themselves. And when the parents are having a strong emotion, whether it's fear or worry or anger, they're saying out loud, like, I'm feeling this way, and not hiding it. Because we can often take cues from our parents. You know, my mom would always go into the closet to cry. And so as far as I knew, like, she wasn't crying. Instead, it's okay to cry in front of your kids and show that. And then a 9-year-old, I think you have a lot of 9-year-olds can start to name their emotions in a really meaningful way. So using tools like books, even the grief process, although their sibling hasn't died, we talk a lot about how parents grieve what their life could have been like, and naming grief emotions. I'm just thinking about Jessica Carenti's book, The ABCs of Grief, which is a very powerful tool. But Annie, what do you think?
No, I would definitely echo that. And it's interesting. I had this exact conversation with the family yesterday with the dad, and the little girl said that, like, she hasn't been sharing what she felt because she knows, she's like, I know you and dad are so stressed out. So she hasn't, but it's been, 6 months since the baby was born, and he was just devastated. I'm like, it's okay. Like, don't take that. Like, it's okay. But I think also, of course, piggyback what Katie said, but like providing those outlets for emotional expression. Sometimes kids don't want to talk, and that's okay. But giving them those other outlets, maybe they like to draw, maybe they need to do something else creative, maybe they need to just get some energy out, whether that's, outside jumping around, running, being on a team. So there's other ways they can also get those emotions out. I think as parents, we always want them to come and talk to us and tell us exactly what you're feeling. And that is important, that they have that safe person, but maybe help them identify other people in their life too that could be helpful, whether it's a teacher or a counselor, a coach, a grandma, whoever that person is. And then just those outlets. Kids will draw and write amazing things. Yeah. If you just give them a little prompt or something, hey, let's draw, they surprise me every time.
Just being cognizant of time, I think maybe we can do one more question that was kind of sourced from the community. And then we have people in the comments who are saying, can you list off resources for us, please? Which of course we always do. And we will always link and list the resources and our key takeaways in our blog as well. But maybe just one more question. I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but is there one that stood out to you that I haven't read yet? I feel odd being the owner of that. If there's one that you feel is really important that's on our sheet, maybe you guys can tackle that, unless you want me to give you one, which I can.
I think the one, Annie, how do I handle trying to give sibling the best schooling and sports activities when we're both full-time working parents? Brother's special school is far away. We don't want him to miss out because of just life circumstances.
Yeah, I saw this the other day and was kind of thinking about it, because that is tough. That is hard, no doubt about it. Because you are trying to do everything for all of your children, both of your children. And from what I've read from other parents too, and I think this is fabulous advice, because I think sometimes parents get the best advice from other parents. One thing that I remember a parent writing was, can you take the summer off from therapies? Or if you're looking at, your weekly PT/OT therapy appointments, is there one that you could maybe skip, because in that day you could take your son to whatever event or sport? And I know that's probably much easier said than done, but sometimes, is it okay just to skip one and do something else for your sibling? Like, you can kind of outweigh pros and cons. Probably every once in a while it is. And then as far as on a regular basis, I think you have to call in the village, call in the troops. As a parent, you would help another family. I feel like every parent's like, oh my gosh, yeah, if they asked, I would definitely help. People will want to help, and they will do that.
I think I'm my daughter's softball coach, and if I were to have a family reach out to me in that circumstance and said, can you help me get my child to practice every week? Resounding yes. So not always just your normal village, but people you haven't met yet won't be empathetic, but maybe will be. And it could really, really help whenever you can give those special opportunities.
Yeah. I'd love to close this out by having you, I know there are so many, and probably too many to realistically list. So, you know, us three, we can meet, and Annie, you and I can like categorize resources based on need or impact or outcome or whatever. But do you have, so many people in the comments are asking, do you have any recommended resources, just off the top of your head, that you think that would be beneficial for our parents to know or look into now, to either help their siblings understand family dynamics in terms of medical complexity, to help with feelings of isolation or loneliness, or emotional stability, instability, whatever comes to mind, that would be great.
Yes, definitely.
Just from the outside in, the SuperSibs program at Hope for HIE should be the first, because it's going to give you all of that. Okay.
Well,
I'm like, well, it's amazing.
And in every packet that I send out, there's resources, whether it's websites, videos, connection stuff for teens, books, podcasts. So I put resources in every one of those, and they're really helpful. Like, I research them and make sure they're, you know, I vet them and make sure they're going to be really helpful. I don't just add anything on there. But other websites in general that I like for siblings, but for parents too, Siblings with a Mission is great. They have tons of resources on there. Courageous Parents Network has a lot of great resources and websites and videos that are good for kids to watch. Again, getting that connection that they're not the only ones. So those are the two kind of off the top of my head that I like to use a lot and go to.
And sibling camps can be really powerful. Sorry not to interrupt you, Deanna, but that's a week that's just for the sibling, or even just a day. And those are amazing programs.
Yep. And, you know, sometimes they have camps that are for the medically complex, you know, for a child with medical complexities and their siblings too. You know,
I think we have that on our website. Didn't we put it on our website?
Let's hope.
If not, we'll put it on there. But I think it is.
Sure. I do. I remember us having an entire Q&A before. If it's on a key takeaway, I know for a fact it is. So yeah, but Katie, thank you for reminding me. We do want to end with Hope for HIE SuperSibs, because it is an amazing resource and it is so beneficial. Like I said, we're coming up on that 1 year mark. So for that last drop, we're going to ask for a lot of feedback from families, just because we want to know what worked. We want to know how we can improve always. I mean, this is something that it was a pilot program, and we just want to grow more, and we want it to be reflective of the true needs of our community members. And there's that's why it's so important for you guys to give us feedback. But I will say we're very excited because Annie, you're starting SOAR, which is actually support programming for children living with HIE. But we are using something called Canvas, and I know I said that, and some people out there from COVID just got some PTSD after hearing the word Canvas, because it is a learning management system that a lot of schools use as we transition to a more virtual platform. But there's a free account. It's not like this membership, and it's an amazing platform where we can insert so many cool tools and resources. So that way, one problem that we as a team have identified with SuperSibs, not that it's a problem, but it is something that we can improve, absolutely, is, you know, there are 4 drops. And then what happens in the 2 to 3 months in between those drops, in between those activities? This platform is something that your child and you or your family could log on to. And there are activities to do throughout. They're year round. Like Halloween is coming up. If that's something that your family likes to do or engage in, like, you know, next Halloween, we can have a SuperSibs activity, you know, and things to do around, and you can post photos, and you can have conversations and discussions with peers, and we can have little resources, and we can have virtual drops of activities to do in the interim. So that way it feels, even though it's technically you're getting, quarterly drops in the mail or whatever, it does feel more year round, and the support feels more cohesive and consistent. So that's something we're really excited to talk about for all of you. And then, of course, if Annie, families can sign up one-on-one with you. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So
and I think
let's talk about that too.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that was one of the things that I felt like I've kind of been missing, and why we want to use a platform like Canvas. So then kids do have a way that they can get a hold of me and reach out and ask a question, or, if there's something that they just want to share or want a resource about, they can do that. But anytime, like, one of the things I do for Hope is I prepare kids for procedures or hospitalizations, or maybe something new happened. Their sibling just had a seizure for the first time. That's really scary. And I can be that safe person to talk to and ask those questions to, because it's not going to stress me out like it does their parents. Sometimes they need another person in their circle to help them. So yes, I'm always here that they can, we can do a call or a Zoom or, whatever. And I try to make it more a fun, like, conversation, maybe do a little bit of games. So it's not, just kind of boring me and them talking.
Well, and you can do that, HIE.support. That's where we have all of our comprehensive support network, and how to direct links to reaching out to you, to our social worker, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, just even though I'm teasing the whole Canvas thing for SuperSibs, that is something that we are going to be actively working on in the next couple of months, and hopefully we can start facilitating that come January when we renew our SuperSibs program. But in the meantime, as you wait for that, Annie, you are here. You are one-on-one. Katie, do you want to do a plug for SupportSpot?
Sure. Yeah.
Talk about that too.
Through our partnership with Hope for HIE, we have the SupportSpot app. So if you want to go to your app store, type in SupportSpot, and then you can download it. And there is a code for HIE, and I can say it here. It's 048325, but it's also all over your website. And I know they'll follow up with the code to get in for free. And on there, we have hundreds of procedures and preparations and hospital passport guides and therapeutic activities to do with kids in and out of the hospital. And it's really just one spot for you to access not only child life information, but also Hope has a lot of the plethora of resources that they have on there as well.
And there's a specific sibling spot in there too.
Yes, and we're always building out and adding resources to that too. So it's a dynamic app, and it's something you go in there one week, a new resource is there that's helpful. I can't thank you both enough. That was so amazing. The engagement that we even had on this Q&A is just astounding. So it just goes to show that this is an area of need. This is an area of interest. And so I'm so grateful for Katie, your partnership. Not just me, we Hope for HIE, everyone, we're so grateful for your partnership with Child Life on Call and SupportSpot. And then Annie, obviously it's been such a blessing to have you join our team, and you've been transformative in providing a lot of these support sibling and just overall family of resources to our community. So thank you so much for being here. It's your expertise and your insights are truly invaluable. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Love being here.
Gosh, thank you. And in the meantime, if anyone has any questions or things, if you feel like your question wasn't answered, or if one pops up, like I said, we will be doing a blogging key takeaways where we can actually answer those more extensively and give you the time that you deserve, the thoughtful response that you deserve for that. And then, like I said, reach out to Annie at HIE.support or Annie G at hopeforhie.org, and you can schedule a one-on-one with her as well. And of course, as always, go to that SupportSpot app, because guaranteed there's probably a resource that can help you answer your question in the meantime too. So thank you. With that, we conclude this month's Child Life Q&A, and I look forward to talking with you both again very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Bye.
Bye.